Hello and welcome to Coffee with Developers. Today we're going to be talking to Daniel Stenberg in Sweden, so it's actually Fika with Developers. Daniel is the maintainer and the owner of the cURL library, something that powers the internet. So let's talk to him how that started and what it means.
Well, it started a long time ago. I've told the story many times before, but actually I started it, basically I found a tiny tool in 1996 called HTTP-GET that I became the maintainer of. I sent patches, I renamed it twice, and then it became cURL in spring 1998 to do internet transfers. Originally, I wanted to do currency rates. I wanted to get them because I had a currency rate translator for my IRC bot at the time. Of course, the bot and getting currency rates vanished pretty quickly, but doing internet transfers sort of stuck. And I would say that pretty early on, I realized that I shouldn't change how things work, right? If I introduce a functionality, I shouldn't, down the road change it so that users would have to update all their scripts or command lines, because that's very annoying. So you want to, once you ship something, it should remain there, and that became a little bit of our way of doing things. So, and that also then goes with the library. So I think that is one of the reasons people like building stuff on top of curl and libcurl, because we tend to just ship it once and then support it forever. That helps everyone. It reduces pain all the ways, so people can almost always upgrade to the latest without having those regular typical upgrade pains with software. And
It is, I guess it is a tricky thing because when you do it in a company, there's a lot of other things going in there. And it's like, I've been a big proponent of API-driven development and actually using third-party APIs to do things that you don't want to write. But I've gone away from that the last 5 years because I've seen so many open and free APIs completely vanish or completely change and become really hard to use. So you can't rely on third-party stuff when it's free, it seems. And that's kind of a sad story. But it's good that products like yours and other products like VLC or things like ImageMagick are still around for so long and haven't changed much that you can just rely on them being. That's kind of like the Unix idea used to be like that as well. Like, don't change things for the end user, or for the end user in this case being a developer. But it seems to be a thing that large corporations do not follow as much. So it's worrying, isn't it?
It is, and you're right that it's a tricky thing. I mean, it takes a serious effort to make sure that you actually stick to it, and it is hard work to do it. So, of course, I understand that in a company you have to put a lot of different, I guess, different things onto the scale and see what's most important here, the API and the other different kinds of profit reasons, right? But for our case, it's easier since we've never been driven by money or anything. We just here for the users. We're just doing internet transfers. We're not, so maybe not easy, but at least we can focus on just the users and doing our thing.
So how do you monetize? Like, I mean, you said like we don't need to make money, which is a great position because you probably do other jobs on the side.
Right.
But it seems like lately you also have a company that actually tries to do an enterprise level support for curl as well.
Right. Someone has to pay so that you get food on the table down the road. So exactly, somewhere, somehow, money needs to get into the picture, right? In my case, I sell support for curl to, well, commercial support, whatever that entails, to companies. That is anything that is related to curl that companies want help with. So I have a fair amount of larger companies paying for support, and I help them with their issues and problems and occasional bugs, and then I do contract feature development and other services around curl, really. And it seems to work, even if it's a bit of a tough situation to sort of sell stuff around something you've been giving away for free for so long. So basically it just, everything already works, right? Most of the features are already there. It's just there. It's been working for ages. So it's a challenge, but it seems to be doing pretty good, at least.
It is tricky when you get like these licenses. I mean, I worked for Microsoft and we worked together for Mozilla. And when you get like enterprise level agreements, like okay, that's not a problem. But then you try to get like $50 for a license for some open source project that needs to get paid to use in a commercial environment. They're like, so where's the billing and why is this? It feels like the more you ask for as a software seller, the easier it gets to get large corporations. When you just say like, send me something via PayPal, they don't see it as something that is actually billable in their larger scale of things.
Exactly. It's a little bit like that. That's why sort of this, sure, I mean, we accept donations and sponsorships like that, but that has never scaled up to the level that it can actually pay for even a single developer in curl. So therefore, we have to provide something bigger so that we can actually get more money and actually sustain a developer full time. And I'm actually only full-time developer for curl.
I was wondering about this. Like, how does it look like in terms of contribution from the outside? When I worked for Microsoft, I had the problem that we hardly got any contributions because people expected us to have thousands of developers in our backend call that can do the thing anyway. So why should I work for free for a large place? But how much outside contribution do you get, and how do you deal with the quality control of that? Because I mean, any Bitcoin bro would love to actually have a Bitcoin miner inside the curl code base, right?
Oh, absolutely. But I would say that we get a pretty large amount of contributions from a large amount of contributors too. So we have a pretty steady inflow of newbies. I mean, I think we have more than 10 first-time authors per month on average, which I think is a pretty good rate of new people coming. And I think on average we're somewhere around 25 authors who get code merged into the Git repository. And that tend to be not the same 25 either. So there's actually a pretty good amount of people helping out. So there's a constant feed of new pull requests and issues being filed by a lot of people. So the long tail is very long. Most people, of course, just provide one patch once and then never again. I think we're about 60% of everyone who ever contributed did it once. Of course, I mean, it's fine. An improvement is an improvement, even if it was just once. Even if we, of course, would happily see them come back, right? Because that's the way you get a new real maintainer, someone actually, climbing the ladder somehow, learning and helping out more. But so we have pretty much, I would say, maybe we are around 15 persons who actually are, real regulars who have been around writing code for the last 5 years or something. And then that slope with people showing up every once in a while down to the long tail with people just fixing a bug once.
What were the big changes that you had? Well, let's do things. First of all, how do you deal with the community aspect around it? Do you have community managers, or do you have people that basically look after your pull requests? And I got a lot of spam on my open source projects, and it was a full-time job to actually get rid of like random questions that don't have any real pull requests without any description or without any action item for me that just say like don't work, and you're like, okay, what do I do with that? So do you have community maintainers, or is it something that doesn't happen as much when you go that far down the rabbit hole down to curl?
I think it's not a big problem, but of course any project will have that sort of problem to some degree at least. So to the degree that we have the problem, we work it out as a team. So sure, I think I review pretty much every pull request myself, but there's a whole team that can do it and will do it. So, and especially, taking care of the rubbish things, because usually the really, I mean, the worst kind of, as you mentioned, those really stupid pull requests or just stupid issues file, they're usually fairly easy to detect. So they're also fairly easy to just, close and get rid of. So I don't think we suffer so much from them, no. But then, of course, it then adds up. It becomes more complicated and more work, of course. Actually, the better the PR is, the larger. So we actually have to spend more time and perhaps more time guiding the contributor to do things the curl way, the right way, and maybe not exactly like that. Maybe you should go more in that direction, and so that it actually becomes in the end then becomes a feature or a pull request that we want to merge.
What's the language that curl is written in, and are there emerging forks in other languages that need a lot of contributors right now?
cURL is written in the fine language C and in the flavor C89, which is, the ancient version. It's from back in the day. So it's an really old style open source project in that regard. And as I said, we've been around for over 25 years. So it's language-wise, I think it's a little bit of a challenge since people nowadays don't really learn C. So I think it's a shrinking pool of available developers. But I mean, it's not small anyway, and you can still learn it and so on. So and I also think that we are a fairly small project. We don't have any bureaucracy or hard bars you have to climb over to get into it. So you can just do it the perfect GitHub style, fork the project, do your changes, do a pull request, and we can merge it the same afternoon if it's a fine change. So it's low friction actually, and fairly easy to get your improvements into.
What's the main difference between curl and libcurl?
libcurl is the entire internet transfer engine, right? So it's really the library that is provided for anyone who wants to do internet transfers. So curl is more of a thin layer to export or expose those features for the shell command line tool. So it's more of a command line parser converting everything into libcurl speak and then back again to spit it out in the shell. So out in the project, I would say, I think I count 160,000 lines of code today, roughly, and I think 130 of them or something is libcurl and the rest is curl. So the curl tool is actually just a little part of it all.
I used to always use curl to download large files on the internet when browsers were still unstable and didn't have proper download like tools. So I always went to the command line or went to the developer tools, did a right click, copy as curl, and then go to the command line and do it and like save it as like whatever MP4 or whatever it was. And it was great because it would auto connect, it would auto complete, it would do all the things that I want to. When you look at these things nowadays and you do a right click on any of these requests that are on the internet, the curl command is huge. There's like so many headers and so many options in there. Has it become that complex to do transfers like that, or is it just that people add a lot of like extra information to do tracking?
I think there's a little bit of both. I think maybe not that we have gone more complicated, because I think over the years we add complications and we add more versions of everything. So HTTP2, HTTP3, and all the ways to do that. That's certainly way more complicated than doing things in the past. But then we also add more flavors, and we have more and more users doing things in more edge case situation, right? So, but in this particular case, you really want it to do this weird little thing, but in another case, you don't want it to do that. So it's a lot of that. So I would say that builds up to this explosion in options. So that we unfortunately many times have to support two ways of doing things, which is very unfortunate, because then we just get more and more options, and we have 257 of them now. It's a ridiculous amount.
But so are you working closely with the standards body that actually does these does the HTTP standard, or is it something that they normally don't come to you and you have to reverse engineer when there was a change?
I work very closely within the IETF and the HTTP standards, so I follow that very closely. I tend to participate in the discussions and make sure that curl sort of lives up to what the specs say, ideally in line with the spec, or in the case of HTTP2 and HTTP3, a little bit ahead of the spec, so that we can also use it as experimental tool to see, does it actually work to do the protocol like this. And also because I think that when it comes to protocols like HTTP and within the IETF, that's driven by a very large extent by browser vendors and CDN vendors, and they do HTTP and internet in a slightly different way than we do in curl and libcurl. So I think I often have an angle into HTTP and networking that they sometimes forget, because they talk about it with a different mindset coming from a different viewpoint. So I really like being part of that and trying to get everyone involved to remember that there are many ways to do HTTP.
It was fun when you talked earlier that you were talking about your IRC bot doing money transfers or money conversions, because we met on IRC on about Commodore 64s back then, like on the IRC channels there, and
Exactly.
the XDCC things were just for sending each other like images of floppies rather than like digital images of floppies, not JPEGs of floppies, but like. Yeah, I never thought that IRC was also a business tool back then. I mean, in Mozilla, we used it as a communication tool.
Yeah, but it wasn't really, I don't think it was really for business. It was more for communication. I found this thing, it cost this much in my currency, but what exactly, how much is that in US dollar today? More like, it was more for a conversation rather than actually doing any transactions.
So it was like more the REST API as the interface was the bot that put it back into your IRC channel kind of thing.
Exactly. You would just ask the bot like, what's $100 in German marks today? Because it was more, we had more currency rates back then before the euro too,
Well, if you just call it AI now and you release the same software, it's going to be like a bot that makes millions of dollars. So we're
Exactly.
back in the same spot at the moment.
Indeed.
So, what is your biggest worry about the transport layer of the internet? We keep talking about Web3. We talk about Fediverse. We're making things different. Do you think we're still going to be talking about curl and HTTP 2728 in like 50 years, or do you think there's a place in the world right now where we're going back to peer-to-peer more? Do you see anything happening in that space that's a trend?
I don't see any peer-to-peer trend to any sort of notable level. I mean, there are efforts and talks and IPFS and so on, but I don't see that at the grand volume of things. So I think HTTP and doing things HTTP style has suddenly sort of become a foundation of the internet. And even, I mean, HTTP and HTTPS is now really used for everything, right? So I think it'll take a long time, if we would go away from that. And I don't see it going in a direction like that just now. So for curl, I think it's a pretty solid foundation to stand on and go on. But then, of course, someone could at some point provide a replacement, right? Or just make something that is much better, much cooler, or preferred by users rather than curl and libcurl. That wouldn't really surprise me. I don't see that happening either in the short term, at least, but long term, I don't know. I really cannot. I'm not a very good teller of the future. I never was. I basically just follow along and do things as I feel a need when things happen, and that has worked out fine so far. I mean, in general, the entire sort of happy coincidence with curl is that I started it at the perfect moment in time, sort of exactly when the entire internet and HTTP and everything took off, and then I could just follow along that explosion or huge growth.
So which are the most commercial products that rely on curl, and are these companies contributing back to you?
That's a hard question, because there are nowadays people joke, but we're getting into that territory that the number of products and companies not using curl is starting to become harder to see, right? So I the other day, well, a year ago, I don't remember, but the top 7 of the most valuable companies on earth are all curl users in products. So they're basically all the multi-trillion-dollar companies, they use curl in commercial products. And everything, TVs, cars, trains, printers, phones, games. So who's the most valuable? I don't know. There's really, I don't know.
Does it scare you that critical infrastructure like trains is running on your software, and there might be a security problem in there that can be exploited? Because there was a case last week or a month ago where in Poland they used radio control waves to actually shut down trains, because they weren't shielded against that kind of attack. So is it something that you worry about, or is it something like, hey, my license in open source means I'm safe there?
Well, I think I'm safe there because of the license and how they use things and so on. But I also don't worry about it because I feel pretty confident with the way we do things, we ship things, we test things, and we verify things. That said, of course, we have problems every now and then, including security related vulnerabilities every now and then. So it does happen, but I don't worry about it, and we've never had any heartbleed level of problems in the past, and with a little bit of luck and hard work, we are going to continue on that streak. So no, I don't worry about it. I sleep pretty good at nights, even though everyone is using my code, and it could potentially be really bad at some point. But yeah, it's no. I think we are doing things pretty good.
I see more and more emails coming from you, and after like 20 years, you came up with a logo for curl, and now there are stickers and stuff. So, what was the change? Why did you do that? Did your kids ask you to make some, or what was going on there?
Well, actually, the logo is like, I don't remember when we made it, but someone, the original logo, I think no, I didn't make that. Someone else made it. I don't remember exactly who. I have his name somewhere. But then I sort of made a variation of that myself and it was always sort of annoying and ugly. And then one day, a professional guy just popped out of the shadows and offered me to help and design a new logo together with me. And I said, thank you, let's do that. So that's how we came up with the current logo. And then I think I just at some point thought that, well, it would be fun to have stickers. And then I have as a little bit of a work on just, work on the marketing and people like curl, people like stickers. So why not try to make that a good combination? So I try to hand out stickers every once in a while.
Wasn't there also an event around curl lately? There was a conference or something, or was that something I imagined?
We try to have, well, we have had at least curl up as a curl developer conference
curl up,
annually. And we haven't had that this year. I think I'm going to skip it this year and do it next year. But so we do have that, but they tend to be rather small, like 20, 25 people showing up. But yeah.
Okay,
it's fun.
So last thing, there is an animal that lives in the woods in Europe that has like a black and white snout. And how do you spell the name of that?
Well, originally I was going to go for the nickname Badger, but I misspelled it sort of from day one, and I realized it fairly quickly. But I stuck with the typoed version of it because I figured it would be more unique. So therefore, I used the nickname Bagder everywhere as a typo animal. But the fun thing is that so many people then just typo it back when they sort of communicate with me because they sort of read and assume that it's supposed to be the animal.
Yeah, it's tricky. So to follow to finish up, because we're quite on time here. Well, we don't have any hard time, but it's easier to make shorter things, and we can always repeat that as well in the future because it was good fun. What are the things that you keep seeing people doing wrong with curl, and you would love to them to do better, to make your life easier and not have like bug requests that aren't really bugs?
One of my favorite nitpick that I always remark on people, that is, so one of the great funs with curl is that so many API calls nowadays, they use a curl command line, right? So you illustrate, maybe you should do this API call, and then there's a curl command line below showing you how to use that API. And there's this disease of using the capital X option in curl that sets the HTTP method to use. And usually people use that combined with the option to actually do the post. And the reason why that is bad is that it breaks when you then ask curl to follow redirects, because then you have sort of overridden the curl's own way to select which HTTP method you use. So I often reply to people to tell them to don't use the capital X option at all, preferably, and not at all for using it for posts. So capital X post, that's rarely the right choice. It's mostly just sort of asking for problems down the line. Don't use that. That's one of the most common things. It's a very mild thing, but I still get stuck on that.
Do you see a lot of like wrong use of post and get and head? Do people actually use the whole of RESTful environment to its all of its options, or do you just see get and post being the most thing?
Oh yeah, get and post is certainly the most things. And then of course I see them violated to different degrees as well, because I don't think people quite read up on the differences on how they're supposed to work and so on. So I think it's more like, yeah, post send data and get gets data. So and then variations of that. And then I see a lot of weird use cases when they do put instead of post, but they should really have made it a post because they don't replace the resource. They're just basically doing a post, but with a put method and so on. So I think I see the whole range of that, from the proper uses to the more ab uses. But in that aspect, HTTP is really open, and as long as the server is with you and you do the curl command lines like that, you can typically do that without suffering, really.
Cool. Well, I thank you very much for your time. When that comes out, how can people contact you, or do you want people to contact you? And what does the curl project need from people? So this is a lot of developers watching that. What do you need from people to help you with?
Well, to help out with curl, there's all sorts of things to help out with. Of course, it's an open source project. We have a lot of code, a lot of bugs, a lot of coming features. I usually tell people to just join in and help out with things they think is fun, a feature they miss, or a typo they found, and fix that. So there's always that. And nowadays I'm mostly at Mastodon, so I'm at Bagder at mastodon.social, trying to leave that other platform. And of course, curl is available at curl.sc. Everything that is related to curl is there. Everything we do sort of issues pull requests on GitHub. Everything I do is also available on my personal website at daniel.hacks.sc, HAXX.sc.
Well, that's been around since ages, so it's good to see you again, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.